Welcome to Bedtime Horror, your portal to scary stories. When I was in my 20s, my friends and I decided to go on a road trip. It was the kind of adventure you dream about, just a bunch of us, a car, and the open road. We were excited beyond words. As we cruised along the highway, our laughter filled the car. The sun was shining, and everything seemed perfect. That's when we saw him, standing on the side of the road with his thumb out. A hitchhiker, looking all rugged and lonely. We slowed down and decided to be good Samaritans. He hopped in, thanked us, and introduced himself as Sam. At first, Sam seemed to be a nice man. He had a friendly smile and chatted about his travels. But as the miles passed, things started getting weird. Sam's smile seemed more like a smirk, and his stories took a dark turn. He began telling us about a series of unsolved murders that had occurred along this very highway. It sent shivers down our spines. He described the victims in chilling detail, like he knew them personally. We exchanged nervous glances, wondering if we'd made a mistake by picking him up. The atmosphere in the car grew tense. We couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Sam. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the road ahead seemed lonelier than ever. The only light came from our car's headlights, casting eerie shadows on the empty highway. Doubt gnawed at us. Who was this hitchhiker, and why did he know so much about those gruesome murders? We couldn't help but question his true identity. Had we invited a dangerous presence into our car? The night was far from over, and our once exciting road trip had taken a new direction. With every passing mile, our unease grew. Sam's stories seemed too detailed, too real to be mere coincidences. He'd gone from friendly stranger to an unsettling figure. His eyes looked around the car as if he were studying us. We decided to change the subject, hoping to steer the conversation away from the strange tales. We talked about our favorite music, movies, and childhood memories, but Sam always found a way to bring it back to those unsolved murders. It was as though he couldn't resist weaving a web of dread around us. The night wore on, and the desolate stretch of highway seemed endless. There was no sign of civilization in sight, just the darkness beyond our headlights. I glanced at my friends, their faces etched with worry. We were all thinking the same thing. How do we get rid of Sam? As we approached a gas station, we saw our chance. We told Sam we needed to refuel and stretched the truth by saying our destination was a town just ahead. Sam agreed to wait in the car while we filled up the tank. Inside the gas station, we discussed our options. We couldn't shake the feeling that Sam was bad news, and we didn't want him with us any longer. We decided that when we got back to the car, we'd tell him the next town was our final stop and he had to get out. But when we returned, the car was empty. Panic washed over us as we scanned the area, our hearts racing. Sam was nowhere to be found. Had he hitched another ride? Or had he simply walked away? We couldn't explain it. There was no way he could have walked so far in such a short time. As we drove away from the gas station, the eerie silence in the car was deafening. We couldn't help but wonder if Sam's stories were true, and he was more than just a hitchhiker. The road trip continued, but our excitement had turned into a haunting mystery. Who was Sam, and what was his connection to those unsolved murders? The answers remained elusive, lost in the darkness of that desolate highway. We may never know the truth, but one thing was certain: we'd always be cautious when picking up hitchhikers in the future. I was on a solo road trip, driving down a remote highway that seemed to stretch on forever. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving me with nothing but my headlights to guide me through the darkness. It was the kind of desolate road that gave me an eerie feeling, but I shrugged it off, thinking it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. As I drove, I noticed a set of headlights in my rearview mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, it's common to have fellow travelers on the road. But as miles passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the car behind me was getting a little too close for comfort. My unease grew as the car tailgated me relentlessly, its high beams blinding me in the rearview mirror. I decided to switch lanes, hoping the driver would pass me and be on their way. However, the car followed suit, staying right on my tail. Now, fear crept in. My heart raced as I watched the car's headlights dance dangerously close to my bumper. I sped up, hoping to create some distance, but the driver matched my speed, maintaining their unnerving proximity. As I approached an isolated stretch of road, the car behind me became even more aggressive. They started flashing their headlights and swerving dangerously close to my car. Panic set in, as I realized I was dealing with a road rage incident, and this driver wasn't going to let up. Desperation took over as I tried to outmaneuver my pursuer, but their determination sent shivers down my spine. I needed help, and I needed it fast. I spotted a sign up ahead for a well-lit, crowded rest area. With trembling hands, I signaled to exit the highway. The aggressive driver stayed on my tail, unwilling to let me escape. As I pulled into the rest area, I knew I had to act quickly. I parked my car among the other vehicles, praying that the presence of witnesses would deter my relentless stalker. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, explaining the terrifying situation to the dispatcher. She assured me that help was on the way and advised me to stay in my car. I watched anxiously as the aggressive driver parked nearby, still glaring at me. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for the police to arrive, wondering what this person's intentions were and what might happen next. I huddled in my car, the minutes dragging on like hours, while the aggressive driver continued to lurk nearby. The rest area, which had once felt like a safe haven, now seemed like a battleground where I was the prey. My only solace was the dispatcher's voice on the other end of the line, keeping me grounded as we waited for the police to arrive. I watched the driver from my rearview mirror, noting their agitated movements. They seemed to be growing increasingly frustrated, perhaps realizing that their intimidation tactics weren't having the desired effect. It was a small comfort, but I clung to it. Finally, I saw the flashing lights of a police car approaching the rest area. This was a relief, but I knew that the ordeal was far from over. The officer parked his vehicle strategically, blocking the aggressive driver's exit. As the officer approached the other car, I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see gestures and body language that suggested tension. The aggressive driver was ordered out of their vehicle and subjected to a thorough search. It was clear that the officer wasn't taking any chances. Moments later, a second patrol car arrived, and another officer joined the first. I couldn't help but wonder what they were finding in the aggressive driver's car. Were there weapons? Were there clues to their intentions? My anxiety remained high as I watched the scene unfold. Eventually, the police officers returned to my car to check on me. They reassured me that the aggressive driver had been detained and taken into custody. It turned out that this person had a history of road rage incidents and had been wanted on unrelated charges. They were a known menace, and my quick thinking in seeking refuge at the rest area had likely saved me from a dangerous encounter. The officers commended me for staying calm under pressure and following their advice. They told me that I had done everything right, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for their prompt response. As the adrenaline wore off and my nerves began to settle, I realized just how close I had come to a potentially life-threatening situation. The encounter served as a stark reminder of the unpredictable dangers one can encounter on the road. It was a lesson I would carry with me on the rest of my journey, always mindful of the importance of staying safe and vigilant while traveling alone. Our family set out on an epic cross-country road trip. We had snacks, tunes, and a trusty GPS guiding the way. But here's where things get bizarre. As we cruised down a scenic highway, surrounded by miles of rolling hills and forests, the GPS started acting up. It was glitching like crazy, giving us wrong directions left and right. We were thinking, what's going on with this thing? Then, out of the blue, it rerouted us. Instead of sticking to the highway, it steered us onto this narrow, overgrown road. Trees were practically leaning in, creating this creepy tunnel effect. And what was even stranger, this road didn't show up on any map. It was like we'd entered the Twilight Zone. Naturally, we were a bit freaked out, but we decided to keep going, thinking it was a shortcut or something. But that's when the weird stuff really began. As we cruised down this mysterious path, we started noticing strange things. First, our cell phones lost signal, no calls, no texts, nothing. We were isolated. Then, our car radio started acting up, blaring static and strange voices we couldn't understand. It was like we'd tuned into some secret frequency. As if that wasn't enough, we saw these bizarre lights flickering in the woods. Weird, unearthly sounds filled the air, and our car's headlights started flickering too. Imagine how we were feeling now, right? Total Twilight Zone vibes. Now, we were seriously questioning our sanity. We pulled over, checked the GPS again, and that's when we noticed something eerie. On the screen, it was like we were surrounded by some kind of restricted area. We zoomed in, and bam! It hit us. We'd unwittingly driven into an abandoned military testing ground. Those eerie lights? Old experimental equipment still active in the area, probably malfunctioning like crazy. No wonder the GPS went bonkers. Now seriously spooked, did we turn the car around and hightailed it out of there. The further we went, the less weird things got. Cell signal returned, the radio went back to playing regular tunes, and the trees stopped leaning over the road. It turned out, we'd stumbled upon some classified government stuff from the past, and that's what caused the whole bizarre experience. We couldn't believe it. So, we finished our road trip with a pretty wild story to tell. And let me tell you, it was one road we'll never forget, even if we'd rather leave that mysterious detour in the rearview mirror.